You're listening to the One-on-One Football Podcast, the number one podcast for Aussie Rules training, coaching and development tips.
Welcome to the One-on-One Football Podcast. My name is Andrew Rains, CEO and founder of One-on-One Football. Again, as usual, joined by my co-host, Harry Symington. Welcome, Harry.
Thanks, mate. Yep, back on the podcast. It's been a little bit of time in between the past couple. We've been very busy here at the business, but yeah, good to be back. And it's finals fever at the moment, Rainsy. Where I'm in Melbourne, you'll be down in Melbourne for the grand final. It's an exciting time of year.
It's exciting, mate. And yeah, apologies to our loyal podcast listeners. We've both been really busy. Harry's been up here and been doing a lot of shooting for our Footy IQ membership, and I've been actually down to Melbourne recently, working with a school down there that we've taken over their football program. So visiting, getting out and about in Melbourne's always good, and so a lot of travel, a lot of planning with the business side of things. So apologies for the podcast episode not being a sort of a weekly. What do we usually do? Fortnightly. We try and do sort of every two or 3 weeks. So, but obviously coming into grand final week, and it's a great time to have a chat, and we've got a couple of sort of key things I want to touch on today. But yeah, what's it like down there at the moment, mate, in Melbourne? The vibe's starting to build. Prelim this week as we record, but moving into the grand final week.
Yeah, it's awesome. There's a real buzz around the place, and I think growing up in Queensland myself, I really notice it down here. So for anyone who's interstate from Melbourne, I'd really encourage you to get down to Melbourne, even just for a couple of days during grand final week, or even the prelim weeks. It's unbelievable. And Rainsy, before we get stuck into the main topic, every week we seem to sit here and say that was the best game of the year. That was the best game of the year. It happens nearly every week at the moment. I'm going to put you on the spot. What has been your favourite game this year to watch?
There's a couple. I thought anything with Collingwood in it at the moment, it's a cliffhanger, isn't it? It's been a really good one. I didn't actually get to see it live, and I had a sort of a pre-planned birthday party was actually at, but the Collingwood and Geelong game looked unbelievable. That was obviously, I think as a whole, that first week of finals was incredible. The Carlton Collingwood one was sort of a nail biter that last round of the series, but the Geelong and Richmond game was fantastic too. Early in the year when obviously it was going for Richmond, but Geelong picked them over the line as sort of the MCG. It was a massive one. I was hoping they'd face off in the finals, those two teams, but just some incredible games this year. What about yourself?
Unbelievable. Yeah, I was actually at that game, that Collingwood Geelong final in week 1. It was unbelievable. Like, I think we were right behind Jeremy Cameron's drop punt from the boundary, so we had a really good angle on that one. It was unbelievable. So I think that's probably my favourite as well. Maybe even the Collingwood Essendon game where Jamie Elliott kicked that goal after the siren.
Incredible. No, it's been a
unbelievable,
a great year, and hopefully can finish off on the same note.
Yeah, definitely. And so looking forward to the prelims this week, we're gonna just do a little. We haven't been that successful picking the games so far, Rainsy, but we're gonna try again this week. So Geelong Brisbane tonight at the MCG. Who have you got, Rainsy?
I did this with Melbourne. I got asked a question. I think I was presenting somewhere at the local Palm Beach Football Club, my club down the road, and they asked me, and they said, it was actually right on game. I think the ball was about to bounce. I said Melbourne, Brisbane. I said, oh, look, my head says Melbourne, but my heart's saying Brisbane. So it's the same thing this week. Geelong, it's hard. How do you tip against them? I think the week off, you can look at it either way. Will they be a bit sluggish coming out, or will they be sort of ready to go, nice and fresh? And Brisbane, can they lift that second half? They were tremendous last week. Can they continue that form? So I'm going to say head and heart again. So head Geelong, heart Brisbane, but you'd probably think Geelong. A victory. It's
interesting. Brisbane played really well last week without Joe Danaher. A bit of a smaller forward line. I think the stats. I remember looking at the stats. In the past 2 times they played Melbourne, they targeted Charlie Cameron twice in 2 games inside 50. And then last week when they played Melbourne in the final and they won, they targeted Charlie Cameron like 8 times or something in one game. So I don't know if that smaller forward line works for them, especially against Geelong's talls. Like, you almost don't want to kick long and tall into Geelong's backline.
No, exactly.
So maybe, they've brought Joe Danaher back in, but it'll be interesting to see how that lines up.
What about you, Geelong, Brisbane?
Geelong. I can't. Yeah, a bit of a boring one, but yeah, just kind of passing the too complete.
Yeah,
too much of a complete side. And then Sydney Collingwood on Saturday night down the SCG.
I think I know the answer you're going to say. I'm going to go Sydney. I just love the way they're playing. I love the way Collingwood are playing too. I think they're the two most exciting teams at the moment, especially where they've come from.
Yep.
So, but I'm going to have to say Sydney. I think they matched up well against them last time. I think that'll give them really good confidence and obviously the home ground advantage at the SCG. Sometimes they used to play those finals out at, I think it used to be called ANZ or whatever, out at Homebush, and they were the Olympic Stadium and used to play out there. But I think at the SCG they'll run over Collingwood and set themselves up for another grand final.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because I think because we had this game at this location so recently, it's easy to say that the same thing will happen again. But I look at the two different teams, and I think Sydney I'd assume just going to play the same brand of footy. But Collingwood are the team they're going to have to change something. They're not going to go there and play the same way. So I almost see like Collingwood going at it with much less pressure. Like no one expects them to win almost because of what happened last time. So maybe for that reason, Collingwood are going to try more things. They're going to play a completely different game. And if Sydney come out and play the same way, but Collingwood have changed, then maybe it's a bit closer. And I just hope it's a bit of a closer game so that
I think it should be. Yeah, I think it should be a really close game. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see.
Yeah, absolutely. It's two excellent prelims, and this podcast is going to come out after those games. So you'll probably be the listeners will be judging what we say now. Anyway,
not a bad way to do it actually.
Totally. So the main topic for today's podcast, guys, we're going to discuss tagging. There's been some current events where it's been very forefront of mind, and obviously Rainsy's been on both ends of a tag in at the highest level. So Rainsy, for a bit of context before we get stuck into the questions, what was your career like tagging and also being tagged, and what are some of the things that you learned from that?
Yeah, so early days in my junior career to get tagged, I think I was tagged at sort of 10, 12 years of age, which is ridiculous. So I was actually on the receiving end. And even in the AFL, when I had a really successful couple of years at Richmond, I was playing off half back and getting a defensive half forward on me and pushing me to the goal square. So I used to do my head in a bit and trying to find ways to sort of combat that. And then when I was at the crossroads of my career a bit and went to Brisbane, I had to find a way to change my game, and I became a tagger, run with player. And was fairly successful over a sort of a 4 or 5 year period there. I don't think some would remember me as a tagger, but some wouldn't. I've seen the sort of recent articles come out about Cameron Lings and Brady Rawlings, and so they were actually known taggers. Kane Corns, players like this, Ryan Crowley. Sort of established myself with a bit of a reputation to be able to do that job, and played on some incredible players like Gary Ablett, and we used to have some really good duels, and pretty much name any sort of recent champion midfielder, and I reckon I've played on them. So a fair bit of experience in that field, and what comes with that is challenges, be able to sort of identify the type of player you're tagging each week, and that's sort of but being my sort of specialty or expertise in that back end of my career to be able to do that.
Yeah, and there's a lot of coaching decisions that go around a tag as well, which is something we're gonna dive into shortly. But so some of the recent tags that have made the news, obviously, Lachie Neale didn't get tagged against Richmond. He had 39 touches. That was the Richmond no tag policy. What are your thoughts on the no tag policy at the Tigers, mate?
Oh, I don't like it. I think, but that's again bias, bit of bias. I just like good matchups, and I think a bit of the old school sort of thing. It doesn't need. Some don't necessarily. I would actually, if I was coach, I'd go with 3 or 4 critical matchups. Now you could argue that forwards are tagged every week because they always get a. Yeah. I think Nick Rewalt used to say this. He goes, well, yeah, I'll get tagged every week, or we used to, because you get the best centre half back or best full back on him. So. I think I would be a coach to go 3, 4 key matchups, and whether that's a real hard lockdown one, or whether that's a bit of a run with, or whether that's, as you said, a sort of if you were playing on a Charlie Cameron or something, you want to put a good sort of defender. I know actually Brisbane up the other end with Starcevic, they put him on a really good small forward each week. So they're the sort of matchups I would oversee. And then when it comes to tagging, I think the Richmond decision to not tag Neale. I can see why they don't do it, and maybe I can explain why to our listeners now, and that's because they've got a whole team system. Richmond and every team, to be honest, they've got a team philosophy or team system where if one player's too lockdown or got their focuses on solely on one player, it can break down team defence. So they're running. I actually used to get in a bit of trouble off Vossi in Brisbane days when I'd probably just run around and make sure that I was locking down my opponent in team defence, where I had to trust my teammates to be able to do the job while I was involved in team defence, and then find the opportunity to lock back down on him. So there's ways around it, but I understand why Richmond don't do it. So, sorry, excuse me. The decision not to be able to do that, I think they may have put someone on him the back end of that game, but it was too late. And Lachie Neale's that type of player. He's very hard to tag, so maybe they did identify that to not go with him. But I definitely would have tagged him.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one as well, because I think I reckon I completely agree. Like if you have a team defense and one person's doing a different role, then it breaks it down. But there might be a point where just there's a critical moment in the game and something needs to change. And if you've paraded as a team that doesn't tag, then you might be hesitant to make the right call if that's what this desperate situation needs. So it's an interesting one, but I probably wouldn't say that there's never a situation to do it and make a policy around it, if that sort of makes sense.
But even if you had someone playing on him and you go, okay, we'll keep Neale to 25. I know the days I used to play on Gaz, it was sleepless nights and nights before I played on Gary, because he was having, that was when he was in his Brownlow form too. He was having, not just 30 touches, he was having 45, 44 touches and kicking 4 or 5 goals, which is an incredible game. So my job was to nullify his influence, not to kick goals, because I reckon a goal's worth, my coach at Richmond, Terry Walsh, used to say this, a goal's worth 5 or 6 stats. So if you have 20 touches and kick 2, you've had 30. I reckon not a bad. It's not a bad way to put it. So if you put that into calculation with Gary, that's an incredible game. So my job was to stop his goals, and his forward 50 sort of entries and his forward half game, and keep him trying to get cheapies down the back end. And if you notch up 25 to 30 with no goals, I'd do a reasonable job. But he's a bit of an exception, because he's always going to get the footy. But if you can keep someone Lachie Neale to 20 or early 20s, and that tag, the tagger actually gets 20 or 21 himself, a bit like what we will lead on to surely what Jared Berry did last week. I think that's the way you got to sort of approach it. So, I don't think taggers can run around and get sort of 5-6 touches. They've got to be able to win the footy themselves. So that's just that fine line.
Totally, yeah. I mean, Brisbane only won by a couple of points, and it's easy for us to sit here and say the tag was the reason why, but if they did tag him and their defense broke down, they might have lost by 10 goals.
Correct. So who knows?
It's hard to pinpoint one thing as the outcome. But as you alluded to, we're going to discuss Jared Berry now. So that was an effective tag. I'd say Rainsy on Clayton Oliver, where Brisbane got over the line, and obviously there was a bit of a scuffle with the eye gouge incident and whatnot. But what did you like from Jared Berry's game on Oliver?
I just liked how he won the footy himself. I think did he have 23 or 20?
Yeah, it was right up there, yeah.
Or 20 in the last half, and he had 26 for the game. He had 6 to half time, and it was a great move. I thought it was fantastic. Clayton Oliver is a star player, but he's actually been able to... I've seen even James Ash, who's probably not the body shape to be able to play on Oliver. Actually, he's done a couple of good jobs on him this year too. So they must have identified that and said, well, he's taggable, and he was obviously having a fair impact on the game. I thought it was a great matchup, and he beat him to the ball a few times. And that's what I was saying before. If you're going to implement a tag, he's actually got to go sort of the old school sentiment on sentiment, or ruck rover on ruck rover, and just play and beat him. Because it's an old saying, if you've got the ball, they don't. So if Jared Berry's winning the footy, well, Clayton Oliver doesn't have it. So he won it more times than him, and I thought he did a superb job. It was just that really good balance of being able to sort of limit his ability to be able to impact the game, and then obviously win it himself. So kudos to Jared Berry. It's a fantastic job.
So you spoke about matchups a little bit earlier, how you like to see good matchups. Is there a situation where you'd make a Nat Fyfe and a Clayton Oliver go head to head for that exact reason, that you think your player's better at winning the football? Is that another option instead of a tag?
Potentially, yeah. You could have a look, and I think we're going to get onto it shortly in our show notes on sort of how to identify that. So I don't want to ruin too much in that, but we could. It's definitely a identifying the key matchup or the role in there, and if you've got a really good matchup, go with it. I think that's a superb thing to be able to do.
Yeah, definitely. And in big games, in big finals, do you think it's there should be more emphasis or less emphasis on a tag, or is it just across the board?
Well, I think, and that's why we sort of we thought it'd be good to slot this subject into our podcast around finals footy, and I think I think I'm seeing a fair bit of it during the finals. So you had Berry on Oliver, I think the week before, and so I love the way Sydney go about it. They got 3 or 4 matchups that they usually do, and I think it was the role of Callum Mills. See, that's another good way. You could say he wasn't tagging him because he won his own footy. Callum Mills played on Oliver. Was it? Yep. I think he played. Yeah, I think he played on him and was able to get off him. So it was just a matchup. But I don't think it was an actual legitimate lockdown tag. But I saw that matchup. I'm like, so maybe we've got to get around the word tag or actually change the meaning of it, because you could argue he was tagging him. So tag would mean someone just sort of touching and following and all that sort of stuff. And he did. He matched up on him brilliantly. And I think Sydney do those roles really well, and they always have. And that's why I love their culture. They've got a sort of an offense, defense, non-negotiables, the way they sort of go about it. And seeing some really good matchups through finals on sort of the tagging. So looking forward to sort of seeing what Geelong do with Brisbane. I think I saw an article during the week. Scott will probably put someone on Neil, no doubt. So we're going to see it again. So yeah, I think it's big games. Get your matchups right. Whether that's, again, take that word out, tagging. Whether that's at run with, whether that's at I just like to call them matchups. Get your 3 or 4 critical matchups and nail them. If you nail those matchups, I guarantee you're going to be a big chance to win the game.
Yeah, definitely, and take that that key player out of the contest, or at least reduce their impact on the game. So, Rainsy, now talking about the players that are suited to this role of negating another player's influence on the game. What makes an effective tagger from a physical, mental, and skillful side of things as well?
Yeah, so the breakdown of a really effective tagger, physically got to be able to run, no doubt be able to keep up with the player, be able to sort of spread, and it all depends on the top player you're playing on. But again, most AFL players have to be able to run, but I think the run with role, you've got to have an elite tank and an ability to be able to not just run for long distances, actually change of speed, because most of the players I play on are probably the match winners of the game, and most match winners have got a fair bit of leg speed. So being able to sort of have a good mix and balance of those. I know when I was an okay endurance runner. I had more speed probably early days, but before my sort of knee injuries and that kicked in, and I had to really work on my tank at the back end of my career or the middle part of my career, and I put a lot of hours in and extras into my running and things like that, and was able to sort of get in that sort of elite group with my game day running. So that's a big one, to be able to focus on having a really good running capabilities. The mental side, you've got to be a competitor. I think you've got to have that grit, grunt. You've got to have a lot of aggression to be able to be able to do that role. You think, again, I name those players champions of the past, known as taggers, your Lings, Rawlings, Corns, who we say, Crowley. They've all got that sort of competitiveness and a bit of aggression. So definitely got to have that. Can't shirk an issue. You've got to be on the front foot. You've got to be really antagonising. I think that's the other one too, to get in their face and be able to be a real presence out there. So that's probably the mental side. And the skillful side, again, this doesn't get talked about a lot with taggers, but you actually got to have high footy IQ. You got to be really, really, you got to read the play. You got to know how to body up. You got to know where the ball is. You got to know where your player is. And you could probably argue the taggers may not be the best decision makers with ball in hand in their side, but conversely, in defence or in the contest, I argue they probably are the best decision-making players.
Knowing when to go and
when to go, when to stay, knowing where the ball is, knowing when to sort of man up hard, knowing when to sort of shift your opponent under the ball, push them away, going to win it. So you've got to be able to read it. And I've seen some players, and this is no disrespect to players that have been at any level. I've just seen it. We'll give that guy a job. He's a tough, combative player, but absolutely got no idea how to sort of body up or read the play and take that player out. So from a skill point of view, being able to be able to read the play and be able to know where the ball is, where the player is at any given time.
Yeah, and if you are playing on the best player in the comp or the best player in the team, I'm assuming you're going to learn more about positioning and how and that decision making in offense just from watching the best players go about it. Like, do you think, well, from your experience, did you find that your footy IQ and your offense improved from playing on people like Gary Ablett and just like noticing when he goes, when he stays, all of his little habits?
They lead to the contest a fair bit. I was a player that actually used to sort of thrive on having a starting point, so I think it suited me, and that's where when I played even my roles down back early days at Richmond, I used to like having a role, and they used to get me in the game to sort of go and use my offensive weapons from there. But I think that you sort of you get led to the footy a fair bit, and you sort of start to go, okay, well, this is how the best midfielders play. This is what I've sort of got to do. So the other one too is, and again, I'll go back to Sydney again. Sydney have been known, and I've spoken to people at the club years ago when I sort of came across the experience of myself. I was actually playing a NEFL game for Brisbane at the time. I was out of the side last year there at Brisbane, and had Jake Lloyd, who's now won 2 BNFs at Sydney, and he was we're playing Sydney, and he was a young kid at the time, and I think I ran off the ground, and he was tagging me. He did a reasonable job. I mean, I made him earn every cent because I was actually still tagging there, but I was just playing NEFL. I just said go out and play, and I actually got tagged. So he actually tagged me, and again had a really good matchup. And I walked over, this kid's going to be okay. He didn't give up, and he played his role and lots of stuff. And I ran off the ground. I think I ran to Nick Davis, who was the runner at the time, and I had a good relationship with Nick. I went to Ireland with him in 2006, and I said, mate, thanks for helping me out. I'm getting older. You didn't have to sort of tag me today, like said someone, because I knew it was a plan. And he goes, that's what we do. He said we give our young guys a challenge to each in the reserves, and then even the AFL when they come up and play, we give each young player a challenge and try and pick the most experienced player on a side in the twos to be able to play on, and it builds their footy IQ back to us. It makes them run and find the football, and it gives them a job. And I totally commend that. That's why I reckon their football program's fantastic, and I could probably name some other clubs that probably don't do that. And that's purely based on building that sort of, earning your stripes and being able to play on good players. That's isn't it?
Yeah, that's awesome. I really like that of teaching a player, or putting the player in a situation to learn by putting them on the best player or most experienced player they have. That's awesome. I think I might skip ahead to the players section, Randy, because that's a really nice segue. I remember, for example, Tuke Miller used to do a lot of tagging.
Yeah, well, there's another one. And
now he's a star. You mentioned Jake Lloyd. So like, is that becoming more of a theme? Like, do you think the Starceviches of the world might end up becoming a go-to mid, or is that a trend that
I think,
maybe
not.
More?
But if you lose that example of Starcevich, I think he's more that sort of lockdown forward. But there's that is it Devon Robertson? I think they're trying to mould him into a bit. He does some run with roles, but I think he's got some attributes to be a really good midfielder. So 100%, I think that's the role for a young player to be able to come in and play, because they're the best player at junior football in the under-18s, and they come into an AFL team and they're like, well, how am I going to get a consistent game? I'm playing, use Brisbane for the example. I've got Lockie Neal and Zorko and these type of McCluggage to try and break into midfield. How do I actually break into the team? So I've probably got to do a role which will give me an opportunity to play, and then once I've got my confidence and ready to go, I can I can sort of play there full time.
Yeah. And so what's your mentality like when the coach first comes to you and asks you to play a role like a tag? I've heard people joke around saying that they don't want to do an effective tag because they'll have to play it again next week and become a tagger. Like, what's the mentality?
Funny you say that. I think I think at the back end of my career, I became really good at it, and it actually was a bit of, what do you call, like you do the right thing, and then as you said, it sort of backfires a bit. I became actually pigeonholed a bit, so then we'd come up against opposition sides and wasn't a taggable player, and then I would be on the cusp of missing selection. It used to annoy me a bit, because clearly, someone doesn't get drafted as a tagger.
As a tagger,
they become a tagger. So you get drafted as a talent of football on your own merit. So I think that used to annoy me a bit, but at the same time, it's spot on, mate. I think I actually early days had that sort of mindset. I was like, well, I don't want to be sort of tagger. I want to go and play my own game. But if you get well rewarded and it keeps your spot on the side and all that sort of stuff, I think it's well worth doing. But yeah, you're right. You do go through a bit of that mindset, being able to sacrifice your own game. And it's a bit of I talk about this a bit. I think there's only even though you might not be tagging, just with the whole structures and everything of the game, like wingers play such an important role these days in the structure of a side. Half forwards do,
in a sacrificial way.
Defenders always got a man. So I've said this a fair bit recently. I think there's only 3 or 4 players in every side, in any AFL side, that just can go out and play. So obviously at Richmond, obviously Dusty's the analogy. Like, he can just go out and play. He doesn't have to really worry about, like, he'll have to man up, but he just goes. He can just be backed by the team to go out and play. But there's only one or two of those. You might have, and then you might have one of those key forwards, Lynch or on Richmond now, or Rewalt, that can just go and fly for their marks and play like they, sort of, obviously they've got roles and everyone's got expectations, but other than that, outside of that, they're the star players. They just get to go out and play. And then I reckon there's 15 to 16 other players in a AFL side that have got like a legitimate role that they've got to be able to play, and it goes against their natural instincts, if that sort of makes sense.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so would your advice to a young player who's just been asked to tag, would your advice be do your very best, because you're going to have a role? The odds are you're going to be in one of those 90% of players that has a role anyway, so it's not that different. Is that your advice to a player?
Yeah, I'd say so. Everyone's got a role to play. Again, if you get back to the tagging word, well, yours is probably a bit more concentrated. But sort of, if I was a coach, do this role really well, and you get the opportunity to keep your spot, I'd be looking to progress them. Again, I think you don't want to pigeonhole them. So if you go, do these roles really well, you get an opportunity to be able to play in the midfield moving forward. So that's sort of the attitude I would have. Yeah,
so there's probably a bit of responsibility on the coaches as well, not to let it become a pigeonholing situation, and that Sydney Swans mentality of, we're teaching this kid how to how to learn from the very best players, but I guess taking some responsibility to allow them to progress their game as well, which is again a really nice segue into our coach section. So the decision to tag or not is obviously with the coaches, and that's a big decision. It can have a lot of impact on the game. But when there's multiple star players or players that have a really really big impact, maybe forward of centre, how do you go about that decision making of choosing which one to tag if you are going with one?
It's a really good question, mate, and I actually agree with the conundrum, or the ability to be able to think through which player should get sat on each week. From my own experience, and I used to really like this from certain coaches. Sometimes I used to feel like as a tagger to go, and I have actually gone in and done this before, is to go in and go, if I'm the tagger, I want to play on this player. All right, so I'll give you a really good example. So there was Richmond. I was playing against my old side against Richmond, and really good mate of mine, and a guy that's been on this podcast before, Brett Deletio. I don't know if we touched on this on our podcast. I might have briefly, but I went into Vossi's office when he was coaching Brisbane and said, I want Lids. He's one of my good mates, and I want to play him because I know I can just shut him down. He hates getting tagged. Or Cochin. Now, Cochin was in his Brownlow form, and Cochin was similar to sort of Ablett in the Ablett mould at the time. He was getting heaps of, probably not kicking the goals, but he was getting a lot of touches. Like, he was, running around the back, getting the old Gaz handball, which get him in the game, then he'd get another one. And he used to do that to me, try to get his stats up a bit. And this is no disrespect to this Koch, and he probably identified this years later. But he was starting to get sort of 30, 35 a game. And then Vossi actually listened to me, said, maybe he did in the first week. He said, no, we really want Cochin anyway. Played on Cochin. He got, he was getting his stats up, whatever. And then Deletio started running amok and just started getting the ball off half back. Then went to half forward. He was one of those star players who could do what he wanted to. Would you say
more impact on the scoreboard?
He was impacting the scoreboards, and Vossi sort of identified that. And then so what they did the next game we played, he goes, Lids is Brett's yours. And so I went on, and so my mindset around that was, I knew, because Brett was more of an outside player. When you're an outside player, they're a lot easier to tag. Now, they can get you on the run. He's got brilliant speed and run. And Stephen Hill, I used to play on at Fremantle in his day too. It's just Tom Scully was another player, not their number one player, but their number one outside player who'd set up a lot of chains and goals. So then I used to play on these players and keep them to, instead of a Cochin or a Fife or the star inside or outside mid, keeping them, they're always going to get 25, 30 touches before similar Gaz. So they're always going to get 25, 30 touches. Let's put someone who's accountable on them, like another good one of our midfielders can just play on him and try and limit his game a bit, but he's going to go out and play really well.
More of a matchup.
Yeah, but if you put him on, as I said before, on Delidio or Stephen Hill or Scully, I'm just naming the players that I played on outside players, and I could keep them to 10 to 12 touches for the whole game. So therefore, there's a huge win. So Koch is going to go and get 25, 30, so we can limit as a team his influence, but we're going to keep Lids, instead of Lids having 25 and kicking 2 or 3 and setting up 10, we've actually kept him to 10 or 12, and he's only set up 1 or 2. So as a coach, as a player, I have that sort of mindset about who were the ones that I could really get a hold of. And then I think it's having the conversation with the tagger, if they're an experienced tagger or a run-with player, and the coach to be able to identify who are the dangerous players. Now, if you look at the current day, Molden, we spoke about him before, Lockie Neal, he's probably just a given just to play on Neal and see if he can lock him down. But I used to like that one, and I think it's a really good discussion to be able to have the coaches listening to this to be able to identify who's that outside player, or who's that player that really gets their run and drive going that we can sort of tag and lock him away. And you know that if you can lock him away, you've locked him away, and he's nearly had no impact on the game. Where these champion star inside sort of those number one mids are always going to have some sort of impact on the game.
Totally, yeah. And I was thinking about this before. It doesn't necessarily have to be the person that's having, well, in my mind, I'm obviously not an experienced AFL coach, but I would think it doesn't necessarily have to be the person who's winning the ball the most, unless contested ball is the reason why you're going to lose the game. So it might also be, for example, if you want to dismantle Collingwood's, this year, Collingwood's like slingshot offense, do what Sydney did a couple of weeks ago and tag Nick Dacos, and all of a sudden, bang, you've dismantled that whole part of their game.
That's what I'm saying. Or do you put someone on De Goey, but you know De Goey can go forward, he's going to mix and match and match up, then you've got to follow him forward, and that throws out your structures.
Totally. Yeah. But on the flip side as well, that would be, so if Sydney come to the game and they say, well, the only reason why Collingwood are going to get over us in this game if they do is their slingshot.
We'll identify it.
So then identify that and then find out the key player. Where it might be intercept marking. Stephen May is gonna dominate us in the air, so we need to put a defensive forward
on him. Yeah.
So do you think it's more based around?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's got to be a part of the whole team plan.
Yep, absolutely. I think identifying how they're going to beat you and then putting things around that to be able to combat it. So that's a good point.
Fantastic. And you mentioned Devon Robinson before. We've spoken about a few others as well. Do you have a favourite tag or someone, Callum Mills, these types of guys? Who do you respect the most in the competition and plays a really good role?
You put me a bit on the spot. They haven't really thought that. And again, I think the game's changed. I don't think they're known taggers. They might tag every 3 or 4 weeks and match up. I know, mate, I really like Berry recently. He's done a couple of little roles, and he's that sort of tough, combative mid. There's Callum Mills has done a few jobs. Again, not probably a tagger as such, but he's had a fantastic year. He can play those sort of jobs and do that role. I've been enjoying because again, I used to play a similar role down back. The Maynards and Starcevicius of the world. I think they've been incredible in their roles, and they're getting some counter punch off the back line too. And I love that style of play. It's the way I used to try and mould my game and play. So I've been enjoying them taking out a key forward or a small, medium-sized forward, and then being able to counter punch the other way. So a couple of those sort of tough players I've enjoyed watching this year.
Yeah. I think the role is really, really evolving. Like you mentioned before, there's sort of it's gone away from just being a tagger. It's now a development opportunity and also opportunities to win your own ball as well. So it's interesting to see how it's being used in today's game. And we've got 3 games left in the season, and who knows, there might be a big tagging story in one of those games as well.
Don't think a tagger's ever going to win a Norm Smith, though, unfortunately, mate. But they might win I reckon they'd win a best and fairest. So that's a difference. So.
Get coaches votes or at the very least plenty of value within the team. Now, Rainsy, back to one-on-one football. So we've as we mentioned right at the top, where we've been very busy creating a lot of content, and I think we mentioned last week on the podcast that we were launching the Breakfast Club up in Palm Beach. How's that been going, mate? We've put some more classes on and expanded that program.
Really excited about this one, mate. So we've just officially launched. I've been playing a bit of a sort of a pilot program, or playing with a bit of a pilot program previously, just at Palm Beach in a local club, as I sort of explained before. But now we've opened up to other clubs, more on the southern end of the Gold Coast, where we've got a membership-based service where you've got classes on any given day on the same time and they know the session's on, so they pay for their membership and they can rock up and they know that every day there's a session on. Now, whether that's we break down the breakfast club. Now it's gone to PM, so we might have to change the name, but we're pretty happy with their names. It was
I eat breakfast in the afternoon all the time.
Yeah, exactly. I eat some cereal. So it's a before school sessions, and then obviously now in afternoons without obviously club training. So we thought we'd put some afternoon sessions on, and we theme them for 40-minute sessions. There's some rotations, and it's on a clock, and it's very well structured with some incredible sort of drills in there. And we theme the class, whether it's kicking club, handball club, marking club. We do an all-round craft club on a Friday, which is really good. So we kick some goals and work in our marking and a few other touch elements to the game. And then in the sort of the off days, we put on a mobility and flexibility class and also a speed class. So some really good things that really gain a holistic approach to your football. And as I said, that, oh, geez, I should probably get down the park or should organise a kick or whatever. You just know that these sessions are on. So we're really excited about this. We think we can grow it into a national model with our coaches Australia-wide and a really good, I suppose you'd call it a program or curriculum that we've sort of set up sort of similar to the Footy IQ drill section where we know that a lot of our drills can be sort of passed down across the country. So looking forward to growing this and, really excited by it.
Yeah, fantastic. We've had some excellent feedback as well. And if the Breakfast Club is something that interests you, to any listeners out there, just keep an eye on our social media page. We post a lot of updates on there. And obviously, as we expand into other locations, keep your eyes peeled. That'll be posted on our social media as well. If you are on the Gold Coast, you'll be able to follow the link in the show notes if you want to sign up for Breakfast Club. That's underway and flying. And then Rainsy... a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month ago now, I was up on the Gold Coast and we filmed a hell of a lot of content, and we've got 2 skills programs coming early October, kicking program and a clean hands program. What's the inspiration for those ones? Yeah,
we just thought we'd launch in the off season. Again, we've got services where you can go face to face, and again small group sessions. But we also know that a lot of people, sort of could be travelling, could be on holidays, might want to just do sessions on their own or with their mum and dad or brother and sister, whoever it is. And we thought we'd give them a proper sort of program they can do in the off-season. So it's an 8-week program, a kicking program, and also a clean hands program where we really delve right into the basics and fundamentals of the skill, but also to add a drill to it. But these drills are based around sort of having a partner, or some you can do on your own, but more partners or small groups. And we've broken it down into sort of the fundamentals or the breakdown. Broken it down into the fundamentals behind the skill. So kicking, there might be four or five main elements to kicking. So it might be a ball drop. Okay, well we've got 5 or 6 ball drop drills that's going to help you. And then we go, okay, follow through. We've got 5 or 6 follow through drills that's going to really specifically target that breakdown of the technique in that skill. So really excited by that too. The clean hands component, very similar and very structured similarly to the kicking program around our philosophy. So we think they're the 2 elements too that a lot of people want to work on. We got some feedback and looking forward to sort of getting those out there and hearing the feedback around it.
Yeah, totally. And I guess it's a resource, a comprehensive resource to, I guess, take the identification of improvement areas, take it full circle, and actually put those goals or those plans that you might have over the off season to improve a skill, put that into action, and it's a program you can access from your phone. You just press play on the videos. You've got reps and sets. You've got advice, and I think something that makes these programs unique, Rains, and it's something that we really, I guess, pride ourselves on is making sure that we're not just showing you how to do the drill, but we're teaching you why you do the drill, and also some of the coaching points. So it's not just a boring drill video. Like I think some of them, Rains, you go for about 3-5 minutes where you actually go into detail on how this might be used in a game as well. So I think there's some good education benefits from these programs as well. For example, if you're a coach or if you're on the Footy IQ membership, you can definitely get something out of these programs as well. Very educational and arguably the most exciting part, Rainsy. We've got some new one-on-one football Sharons that have just arrived, and we're starting to send them out to our coaches. We've had some comments already. There's one red one that you've got up on the Gold Coast that's had a lot of attention.
Oh, the kids want to pull that ball out all the time, but it's I try and save it for our photo shoots, but I might have to open up a few more. So yeah, we've got our custom logo on the Sharons and got a great relationship with Sharon and being able to ship up a few footballs and being able to use them. And then now we're sending them out to our loyal coaches on the platform. So look out for those in the sessions, and yeah, it's obviously great branding for us, but also too good quality footballs. There's nothing better. Yeah. And as we know, so in our sessions, we pride ourselves on being a sort of a service that's a really professional service with our professional coaches, and with professionalism must come professional equipment, and we've got that scattered around the country now, which is great.
Yeah, absolutely. And for those that aren't Footy IQ members yet, when you become a member, you actually get a discount code for the Sharon website, and you get 30% off their range of footballs. So. If you need some new footies, become a Footy IQ member and you can get a discount on your Sharons. And then Rainsy, so the final segment before we jump off, the VFL Grand Final is this weekend. We got Southport versus Casey. There's a few players in the Southport team that you've coached. I think you'd know most of them.
Yeah,
on a personal level.
Well, there was a Suns and Southport game last week in the prelim, and I went through the list. I think I coached 20 to 21 players or something on both sides. So I had a vested interest in both sides, and obviously the Suns, and then actually played a year at Southport in the Southport Hall of Fame, and only played. I reckon I played 3 senior games and two or three reserves games, and I'm in the Hall of Fame there, which I don't know how I got in, but thanks a lot, the Sharks. It's a privilege and an honour. So I'll be going for the Sharks this weekend. Yeah, a lot of some of our coaches too, our one-on-one football coach. We've got Maxie Spencer here on the Gold Coast. Well, they're all on the Gold Coast for that fact because they play for Southport. But Jacob Dawson, we've got Zach Foot, who I thought was fantastic last week. I thought he was best on the ground and should be probably playing at AFL level. And congratulations to those guys. I think Dawes got in the team of the year, which was fantastic the other night in the VFL Awards. And
the coaches MVP as well.
Coaches MVP. Sorry, and missed out a couple of other players. We've got Billy Gowers. Just put him on. So apologies, I'm missing. He's Sebi Tape, Macca Willis. I think it's sort of about it. So 6 or 7 of the players that are playing will obviously our one-on-one coaches. So good luck to the boys. Go the Sharks, and should be a great grand final actually. So I think probably Casey the favourites, but I think the Sharks can do it. I think they've got a really good side, and it's a different venue this time when they played each other last time. They played at Casey, but they're going to be playing at Icon Park in Carlton, Princess Park. So
yeah. And mate, obviously you grew up on the Gold Coast, played footy in Melbourne, then played AFL back in Queensland, and now live up there and do a lot of coaching as well. Do you think footy in Queensland's in a pretty good place? We had 3 of the remaining 4 VFL teams as Queensland teams. We had Brisbane, Gold Coast, and Southport, obviously in a Victorian competition. What do you like about Queensland footy at the moment?
I think it's in a really good place. I think it's just shown through the academies and the pathway stuff that obviously you came through and I was involved in, that the players that are sort of staying in Queensland at Southport or even topping up at Brisbane or the Suns. I know there are a lot of AFL listed players, and obviously a lot of academy players get the opportunity to play there, but it just shows you the quality that's coming through. I looked at that side the other day at Southport. A lot of those kids are young men are Queenslanders, so I think to be able to stay in your home state and be able to play at a really high level through the VFL, I think it's a great thing to be able to do, and it's just improved the level of football. You don't need to, back in the day when I was coming through, don't need to go to sort of Melbourne or Adelaide to join a team. Now you can obviously stay in your home state and play at a really high level. So I think that's been the improvement of it all. And again, without being too biased, the pathways and the academy stuff over the last 10 years, having them set up has really helped prepare these guys. And I always say this is not about making AFL football because only a handful get there, or very limited amount get to the AFL, but it's setting them up to play really good VFL, NEFL back in the day, and obviously QAFL up here in Queensland football. So it's been really good. So hopefully more players to be able to come out, and the VFL too. Pat on the back too. I think it's been a great concept this year. Not too sure about the naming rights. I think obviously really Victorian dominant down there. I've got my foot in both camps, being a born Melbourne boy and and spent a fair bit of time there, and obviously live there. I totally understand, but from an interstate point of view, I think they get a bit annoyed that it's still called the VFL, but hopefully that may change.
Yeah, we might end up having a national reserves competition, which would be great.
Sounds
but
good.
yeah, I think obviously interstate teams raising the standard obviously just makes the Victorians do the same. But
Yeah.
Rainsy, to finish off, some news came out about Liam Jones this week. Just wanted to shout him out.
We just saw Liam this morning and did a session. He's involved in our breakfast club, so incredible to have him involved in our program. And he'll be leaving shortly. Unfortunately, he's nominated the Bulldogs, and he's quite excited by getting back into the AFL, and so he does. He deserves to be back into it. So he's really excited. Hopefully, he gets. I think it's pretty much a pretty straightforward move for him to go to the Bulldogs, and hopefully get the Dogs back up the ladder, and all the best for Liam. He's been fantastic up here as a coach, and really great with kids, and hopefully he'll still keep him involved even as an AFL player when he goes back to Melbourne.
Yeah, he's been a ripper and a big part of the platform up on the Gold Coast. That brings us to the end of the episode, guys. Thanks for listening. We obviously appreciate having your ears for 45 minutes this time. And if you've got some time, it'd be really we'd be really grateful if you could leave a review or rate the podcast and follow it on whatever platform you're listening to. But other than that, Rainsy, any final words?
Oh, not really, mate. I just I think we've sort of touched on most things and covered everything. I think good luck to everyone out there that's still playing. I think there's still some finals going on, and obviously to our AFL and AFLW players, there's still a lot of football going on. So, and I know that people are having a bit of a rest out there at the moment, probably after a big footy season. But looking forward to seeing you all back into it over the next couple of weeks.
Fantastic. Thanks for listening, guys. We'll see you for the next episode.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for listening to the One-on-One Football podcast. If you got something out of today's episode, we'd love it if you could leave us a review on Spotify, Apple Music, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you want to stay updated on special guests, new episodes, and more, please subscribe to the show on your chosen platform. And finally, if you have any questions for Rainsy or myself, or you want to get a particular guest on the show, please reach out. Our email address is podcast@oneonOnefootball.com.au. Thanks, guys. We'll see you for the next episode.